The doctor was taken aback upon discovering what lay between the legs of this 15-year-old patient. Greetings, everyone. Take pleasure in these tranquil moments as you watch. On that night, the wind roared with fierce, biting gusts that seemed to slice through the air. Along a desolate highway south of Bozeman, an aged gray truck lingered quietly at the fringe of a pine forest. Moonlight, veiled by a delicate mist, illuminated the slushy snow and mud beneath the crouched figures of two men as they pulled a small body from the confines of the truck bed. "Hurry up," one of them commanded, his voice rough and commanding. He donned a wolf scarf that cloaked his features, leaving only his eyes visible, glowing with an intensity reminiscent of an owl's gaze in the night. The other man swung open the back door, flashlight gripped firmly in his hand, casting its beam across the dim interior. She stirs, her movements persistent, then let her go. "Out here, it seems, no one is paying attention," the first man responded with a chill in his voice. He stooped low and seized the child's leg, pulling her along as if she were lifeless. The child stood exposed, her small form marked with streaks of blood and grime. Upon her left buttock lay a branded mark, an unsettling spiral seared into her flesh. Her hair lay in tangled disarray, fingernails shattered, and her bruised flesh resembled something more akin to discarded meat than the skin of a living being. She stirred ever so slightly, her eyes wide open yet devoid of life. The man seized her wrist with a fierce grip and hurled her into the icy depths of a roadside ditch. A heavy, soggy thump shattered the stillness. "Let us proceed," he commanded. The door of the truck banged closed with a resounding thud. The engine bellowed, then slipped away into the darkness as though it had never existed. The girl let out a low groan, her back curving in response to the ache that coursed through her. The flickering lights in her mind were not celestial bodies, but rather the haunting echoes of violence, cries, and the iron tang of blood. She struggled to crawl, her hands thrashing in the cold, slushy mire. Each incision sank further into her tender flesh. I must be dead," she murmured, her broken, slurred English escaping her lips like a fading whisper, her voice thinner than a dying breath. Barely conscious, she persisted in dragging herself inch by inch toward a distant glimmer of light. Bozeman General Hospital. The iron gate stood before me, a delicate whisper of hope. Blood flowed from between her legs, intertwining with the mud, creating a vivid crimson path. Within the bustling confines of the ER, Nurse Isabella found herself stirring her coffee. The hour hand pointed to 3, the stillness of the night enveloping everything in a hushed embrace. With a soft sigh, she turned her gaze toward the window. "It feels eerily silent tonight," she murmured. The silence hung thick in the air, wrapping around her like a shroud, stirring a sense of unease within her. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door, softly insistent yet unwavering. Isabella lifted her gaze. A diminutive silhouette lay crumpled beneath the glow of the hallway light. Her voice pierced the air with a sharp cry. "Oh my goodness. A child exists beyond the horizon." Dr. Nathan, a resident, had just emerged from the break room, almost spilling his coffee in the process. "Could you repeat that?" "A young one. She is losing blood, swiftly now." Both of them dashed out. Isabella sank to her knees, her hand quivering as it made contact with the girl's body. She flinched immediately. Her hand was icy, smeared with blood, dirt, and the pungent odor of charred flesh. "She is engulfed in a feverish haze," she cried out, her voice trembling with the cold. Nathan lifted the girl into his arms and dashed indoors. The doors of the emergency room swung wide, a sudden rush of urgency filling the air. Chief Surgeon Edward Smith had just completed a surgical procedure. Upon witnessing the scene laid out before him, he became utterly still. "What on earth is this?" he murmured. Nathan gently placed the girl upon the gurney. Crimson fluid continued to seep relentlessly from between her thighs. Isabella whispered, exposed and marked for all to see. Edward donned his gloves, his demeanor frigid. He gazed upon the child, gaunt and ravaged, a sight so unimaginable that it defied belief. How could a human, especially a child, endure such unspeakable horrors? He lowered himself to scrutinize her closely. Yet, as he drew back the blanket from her lower body, he found himself momentarily paralyzed. A tide of nausea rose within him. Edward dashed from the room, his stomach churning, and he heaved into a nearby trash can. "Oh, dear God, what have they done to her?" Isabella trailed behind him, her eyes glistening with tears. "Is she still among us?" "Indeed, though just by a hair's breadth." The girl opened her eyes, a milky white hue clouding her gaze, unfocused and distant. Her lips parted and began to form words. Edward hurried back, bending in to catch her words. "My name is Nora," she murmured. Reluctance coursed through me as I faced the ritual, yet the entire village stood by, their eyes fixed upon me. Edward stood motionless. "Could you repeat that? Which village are you referring to?" "Blackwood," she offered a slight nod before succumbing to unconsciousness. The following morning, within the confines of the chief's office, Edward presented the file, laid open, before Lieutenant Matthew Davis. Observe, this was a harrowing ordeal of systematic torment, neither an accident nor an instance of domestic abuse. Matthew scowled, drumming his fingers against the surface of the desk. "It may involve trafficking." Edward gave a slight shake of his head. "Absolutely not. A mark of distinction is present, a twisting spiral. In a report from 1989, I came across a mention of an ancient cult situated in the north. They received the call, the lifeblood of the mountain." Matthew's eyes grew wide with surprise. "I had always believed that was merely a legend." Edward flung the file onto the desk. "It is indeed genuine, and that girl endured. If you fail to reach Blackwood promptly, I assure you I will escalate this matter to the national press." Matthew rose to his feet. "Very well, I shall conduct an inquiry. Yet, you ensure her safety. Her presence must remain a secret, hidden from all eyes." "There's one more thing," Edward stated with conviction. "I require your personnel to oversee the ER this evening." Matthew nodded with a somber expression. "I will dispatch Officer James. Yet, if your assertion holds true, we find ourselves confronting a whole village of fiends." In the dimly lit emergency room that night, Isabella lingered by Nora's bedside. The girl tossed and turned, a cold sweat glistening on her forehead. Isabella caressed her hair, her voice quivering as she whispered softly, "Who would inflict such harm upon an innocent child?" In the hallway, Officer James remained motionless, his hand poised on his firearm. He gazed toward the door, where the snow had started to descend with increasing intensity. Silence enveloped the hospital, a collective breath held in anticipation, as if the very air was charged with the promise of an impending moment. In the forensics room, the fluorescent lights cast a harsh glare on every detail of Nora's body, a child emerging from a nightmare more vivid than anything Edward had ever faced. He remained still, latex gloves gripping firmly, his complexion ghostly. Beside him stood forensic examiner Dr. Lucy Harris, a woman in her 40s with her hair tied back and eyes that gleamed with determination. She donned her gloves and leaned in closer to the girl. Her gaze traversed each scar, each burn. The silence stretched on for several moments, with no one daring to break it. The heart monitor emitted a steady, rhythmic beep. "Are you witnessing this?" Lucy directed her gaze toward the child's genitals, a cut that runs straight up and down, deliberate, profound. Additionally, the edges bear the scars of burn marks. Edward trembled. She was consumed by flames. "Even more troubling," Lucy murmured gently. This held a ceremonial significance. Edward leaned in for a better look. A fresh scar adorned her lower abdomen. A pair of spirals, 2 rings elegantly entwined, etched with a keen edge, then seared, resulting in an indelible mark. Lucy inclined her head in agreement. The timeless emblem of the mountain's blood, a purported cult of sacrifice hailing from the northern regions. Yet, I never imagined. "In 1989, I recall a particular case," Edward interjected. "A girl discovered within the depths of a mountain cave, bearing the same symbol. The authorities referred to it as a folk ritual. She did not make it." Lucy gently shut her eyes, savoring the stillness for a fleeting moment. "Nora stands as the inaugural living witness." The door groaned as it swung ajar. Isabella entered the room, her hands cradling a stack of medical records alongside a steaming cup of tea. She mentioned that she had just awakened, uttered a handful of words. Without hesitation, Edward made his way to the recovery room. Nora reclined in silence, her eyes unblinking, fixed on the expanse of the ceiling above. Isabella perched beside her, gently clasping her hand. Her voice drifts gently, as if woven from the fabric of a dream. "However, I believe it is something you ought to listen to." Edward leaned closer and murmured softly, "Nora, this is Dr. Edward speaking. Do you recall our time together?" Her eyelids danced gently, lips quivering. "My name is Nora, indeed." You are secure at this moment. Is there something you'd like to share with me? She took a deep breath, her throat tightening as she swallowed. Her throat ached with a fiery intensity, yet she summoned the strength to utter a whisper. The ritual was something I had no desire to partake in. I declined, yet the midwife insisted that those who resisted would meet their end. Edward inquired swiftly, "Which midwife? In what place do you reside?" "Blackwood, ascending the mountain." "Did anyone witness what transpired with you?" She nodded softly, her expression twisting as though on the brink of tears. The entire village observed intently. I received no assistance from anyone. Isabella succumbed to her emotions, tears streaming down her face. Edward's fists tightened into hard knots. An urgent assembly convenes at the Bozeman Police Department. Lieutenant Matthews struck the table with his palm. "Blackwood. In 2004, we experienced the unsettling incident of a missing child. A young boy of 8 years disappeared without a trace. It was said by the townsfolk that wolves had claimed him, declined to engage." Officer James gave a subtle nod. "Indeed. John Wilson serves as the chief of the village, always remains in the confines of the town. He had once been rumored to orchestrate clandestine rituals, yet we possess no evidence to substantiate the claims." Edward raised his voice. "Nora stands as the undeniable evidence. Please make your way there, at your earliest convenience." Matthew fixed his gaze on Edward, his tone resolute. "Doctor, do you understand the peril we face? When the whole village stands united in silence, it reveals the shadowy underbelly of organized crime." "I understand," Edward responded with a chill in his voice. "Yet if no action is taken, they will persist unabated. More children akin to Nora will emerge." Following a profound stillness, Matthew inclined his head in agreement. "I shall assemble a team to venture into Blackwood. Yet it is imperative that you ensure Nora's safety. This information must remain confidential for the time being." 3 days later, as Nora lay in slumber, an unexpected convulsion seized her body. Edward burst into the room. The girl sat upright, drenched in perspiration, her eyes wide with fear. "Absolutely not. Once more, it seems. I have no desire to meet my end." Edward embraced her with a firm grip. "You find yourself lost in a reverie. You are now secure. This is a place of healing." She grasped his shirt tightly, tears streaming down her face as she succumbed to her emotions. "They bound me to a post and the blood flowed relentlessly. I implored them to cease." Isabella made her entrance, a towel draped elegantly over her arm. Edward murmured softly, "We shall ensure that no one lays a hand on you ever again. Never again." On that particular afternoon, a parcel made its way to the hospital. There is no sender identified. Isabella affixed her signature to it. Upon opening it, she discovered a rag doll, its head severed and reattached with crimson thread. Upon its back lay a spiral symbol, etched in dried blood. A note accompanied it. "The girl is forbidden to flee. Allow her to ignite." Isabella let out a piercing scream as the box slipped from her grasp and tumbled to the ground. Edward hurriedly approached and perused the note. His complexion drained of color. "They are aware of her presence." Matthew received an immediate summons. The hospital's security measures were strengthened, yet Edward was acutely aware that time was slipping away. He dialed Lucy's number and murmured, "I need a place to hide." "It is not a hospital. There are no records available." Lucy replied, "I have a location in mind, a weathered medical station nestled close to the Wyoming border. It lies in desolation. It is a place untouched by the footsteps of others." Edward inclined his head in acknowledgement. "Our departure is set for this evening," Isabella objected, insisting they depart without involving the authorities. "Have you lost your mind?" Edward fixed his gaze upon her with unwavering intensity. "Select one. Remain patient until they arrive or venture to a place that escapes their notice." Ultimately, Isabella acquiesced with a nod. "I shall gather the necessary medicine and emergency supplies." As the clock struck midnight, an aging ambulance, piloted by Lucy, quietly departed from the hospital. Nora rested motionless on a stretcher in the rear, her presence a haunting stillness amidst the chaos. Isabella perched beside her, gently clasping her hand. Edward occupied the passenger seat, his gaze locked onto the rearview mirror. A peculiar vehicle materialized behind them for just a fleeting moment before it disappeared into thin air. Edward whispered, "God, may they not discover us." Lucy gave a slight shake of her head, refrained from seeking divine intervention. seek the stillness of the world. The path leading into Wyoming lay barren, shrouded in a thick layer of snow. Silence enveloped the room. The atmosphere crackled with an intensity that felt as sharp as a knife poised to strike. They made their entrance at the break of dawn. The ancient medical station loomed, its windows shattered, and its walls draped in a cloak of moss. Edward lifted Nora with care, cradling her gently as he crossed the threshold and laid her upon the weathered wooden bed, its surface cloaked in a fine layer of dust. Isabella ignited the flame of an oil lamp. This location is chillier than I had envisioned. Edward let out a weary sigh. Yet at the very least, our presence remains a secret to all. The wind outside grew more insistent. Deep within the forest, an owl emitted a haunting cry, a portentous signal of an impending storm. 3 armored police vehicles crept steadily along the serpentine dirt road leading into Blackwood. The snow had descended relentlessly since dawn, transforming the earth into a slick expanse of mud that clung stubbornly to the license plates. Lieutenant Matthews occupied the front seat, his gaze fixed intently on the GPS screen. James clutched the steering wheel, his gloved hands quivering ever so slightly. "Creepy town," James muttered under his breath. "Once I found myself here, stepping in as a trainee. Chilled to the core, and so silent it drove you to madness." "Limit the conversation," Matthews instructed with a pointed tone. "Our purpose here transcends mere sightseeing." In the rear, officers Ellen and Tom meticulously inspected their firearms. Each of them donned bulletproof vests, equipped with chest cameras and earpieces that remained perpetually active. "Any indication?" Matthew inquired through the comms. "Dim. Truly lacking strength." "There could be a jamming device in the vicinity," Tom replied. "Or perhaps the snow," Ellen suggested. "It could be both," Matthew murmured, his voice heavy as lead. Blackwood appeared as a dark mark against the pristine white of the mountain slope. More than 20 houses stand with roofs in decay, their stone walls draped in a shroud of moss, while windows are tightly bound with heavy cloth. Silence reigned, with not a single dog to break it with a bark. Silence reigned, with no roosters to herald the dawn. Just the hush of silence and the gentle fall of snow. In the heart of the village square, the police vehicles came to a halt. An elderly figure, draped in a woolen cloak and supported by a sturdy cane, emerged from the grandest of the houses. "Village Chief John Wilson," Matthew muttered. "There he is." John approached them deliberately, his gaze unwavering, as he regarded the officers as if they were peculiar beings from another world. "Welcome," he murmured, his voice flat and unfeeling. "What compels you to venture out in the midst of a snowstorm?" Matthew advanced, his badge gleaming as he held it up with authority. "The police department of Bozeman. Our purpose is to delve into a ritualistic crime that centers around a child named Nora. She mentioned that she once called this place home." John remained still. After a brief pause, a subtle smile graced his lips. "There is no resident by that name in Blackwood. This is not the destination you seek." James advanced, locking eyes with him in a fierce confrontation. A spiral scar adorns the girl's hip. "I have no doubt that the village chief understands my intent. We don't concern ourselves with nonsense," John replied, his eyes shadowed with intensity. "If you've come to hurl unfounded accusations, it would be wise to depart before the sun sets." Matthew took a step back and leaned in to whisper to James, "He's stalling. Surely the entire village is aware. Gaze into their eyes." James gestured toward the shattered windows, where indistinct silhouettes lingered, their gaze fixed intently on him. "Part ways. Explore the surroundings." "Yet no one ventures off alone," Matthew commanded into the radio. 2 teams were formed by the police. Ellen and Tom made their way to the storage barn situated at the village's edge. Matthew and James made their way to a clearing nestled behind a forsaken church. In that moment they discovered it, a charred wooden post standing solitary in the heart of the yard. Rusty chains hung limply from it, and at its base, adhered to the charred wood, lay a small, singed fragment of human skin. James gasped for breath. Alas! Matthew crouched low, grasped it with his gloved fingers, and promptly let it slip from his grasp. "Obtain DNA confirmation at a later time. Yet, I require no examinations to understand that someone met a fiery end in this place." They could hear the sound of footsteps drawing near from behind. A middle-aged woman clad in a brown cloth coat, her visage etched by the trials of life and the chill of the air, approached with measured steps. She gazed at the charred flesh and murmured softly, She ought to have perished. Matthew spun around. What was that you just uttered? The woman remained silent. She pivoted gracefully and slipped away into the shadowy confines of a narrow alley. James exclaimed, "They are aware. Everyone is aware." Matthew remained motionless for a brief moment before shouting into the radio, "All units, converge at the village center. Contact the main office. Initiate the protocol for a criminal investigation. Signal absent." Ellen's voice pierced the airwaves, a desperate scream echoing through the radio. We were abruptly severed from the connection. At that moment, the church bell tolled, its source a mystery to all who heard it. The sound sliced through the atmosphere, evoking a sense of beckoning. From every shadowed alley and creaking doorway, the inhabitants of Blackwood spilled forth. Each figure donned heavy wool coats, their necks swathed snugly, gazes vacant and unseeing. In the heart of the square, they gathered in a silent circle, their eyes fixed intently on the scene before them. Ellen and Tom reappeared, their faces ashen. We find ourselves encircled. With a steady hand, Matthew unsheathed his weapon. One does not strike unless struck first, yet not a soul stirs. We must extract the evidence from this location. John entered the heart of the circle. His voice resonated in a cadence, reminiscent of a chant ingrained in him since the dawn of his existence. To betray the ritual is to betray the very essence of the land itself. The whole village reacted. The earth calls for sacrifice. Matthew shouted, "You're violating the law. This is an act of murder and a form of torture." Silence enveloped the room, as no one offered a reply. Every gaze fixed upon the uniformed officers, devoid of hatred, not with trepidation. Yet there exists a profound denial of their very humanity. Lucy perched in the vehicle, her attention fixed on the radio, when an unusual occurrence caught her eye. She attempted to reach Matthew, but the signal indicated disconnected. Only the static lingered, followed by an enveloping silence. She murmured, "It began." Within the forsaken, frigid medical station, shadows enveloped everything around. With a flick of her wrist, Lucy activated the flashlight, casting a beam of light into the darkness. The light cast its glow upon the decaying walls, where rusted four-stands hung in a forlorn manner, and a solitary metal bed occupied the center of the room. "Put her down," Edward commanded. Isabella complied. Nora shook with intensity. "I find myself wishing to be elsewhere. This place lingers in my memory. I found myself bound in this place previously." Lucy stood still, her body rigid. "Do you truly believe that?" On a night that chilled to the bone, the air thick with the scent of medicine and smoke, the girl trembled. They pulled me in, suspending me by my legs, my head dangling downwards. Edward averted his gaze, his fingers tightening around the fractured iron bar of the window. "Those creatures, they transformed this location into a site of sacrifice." The wind wailed with a haunting intensity. Out of the shadows of the forest, a haunting rhythmic chant reverberated through the frigid air. "Flames cleanse, and the chill of winter insists upon it from us." Isabella grasped Nora's hand with a firm intensity. "Surely that cannot be true." Edward hurried to the window. The torchlights danced softly amidst the trees. A multitude of masked figures glided through the forest, adorned with oak leaf masks and clutching torches in their hands. With a swift motion, Lucy drew her weapon. "They have discovered our presence." Nora whispered, "They're singing," just as it was on that night. Isabella wept, urging, "We must flee. It is time for us to depart." "There's nowhere to run," Edward said, shaking his head in resignation. "We are left with but a single choice, to fight. In the company of 4 individuals and a wounded child." Lucy erupted. Edward remained silent. He approached the medical bag and retrieved a small device. "This device serves as a GPS tracker. This morning, I tucked it away in Nora's jacket. If I am captured, they will still manage to locate her." Isabella stood still, her body rigid. "Are you prepared for this?" Edward inclined his head in acknowledgement. "I have witnessed countless patients and endured the sorrow of many lives lost. Yet I have never witnessed a child emerge from the depths of despair and still possess a desire to embrace life." Nora gazed at him, her eyes shimmering with emotion. "I still wish to embrace life, yet they refuse to allow me." With a swift motion, Lucy secured the door, ensuring her sanctuary remained undisturbed. Access to this place is not granted without considerable effort. Footsteps started to reverberate in the corridor beyond, unwavering, resonant and rhythmic, akin to the heartbeat of a vibrant soul. A beam of light sliced through the fissures. A soft voice echoed, "Surrender her, and we shall depart in silence," Edward shouted in defiance, declaring that no one would be surrendered. "All of you are unwell." Then the voice persisted, hauntingly soft. "The girl is a child of the mountain. Her blood serves as the sacred promise. We merely fulfill what has been prophesied." Lucy discharged a bullet into the ceiling above. "Advance another inch, and I will eliminate each and every one of you." The figures dispersed. Quiet enveloped the surroundings once more. One by one, they started to encircle the clinic, creating a blazing ring of flames. Flames cleanse. Isabella embraced Nora more closely. "We are not leaving, Edward." He faced her, gently grasping her hand. "Yet we shall not permit her to perish in such a manner." Once more, it seems. The door trembled. At one moment, twice. With the third strike, a piercing crack echoed through the air. "They are making their way through," Lucy shouted. "Prepare yourself." Nora propped herself up, her eyes glistening with tears. "They are preparing to set me ablaze, as they have done in the past. Yet on this occasion I shall remain silent. I shall not plead." Isabella wept bitterly. "You are not a victim of circumstance. You are an individual." At last the door swung wide, flinging itself open with a sudden force. A chill wind rushed through the air. With it arrived the rhythmic chanting, the presence of wooden masks, and the pungent aroma of burning resin. Edward advanced, positioning himself between them and the bed. "To claim her, you must first face me." The cloaked silhouettes came to a halt. It was John Wilson who took one step forward. He peeled away his mask, revealing eyes that glimmered with a chilling frost. "You fail to grasp the situation. The offering of blood is steeped in tradition. The lifeblood of an innocent child sustains the mountain, preventing the earth from fracturing. It stands as a solemn agreement from those who came before us." "You're all mad," Edward growled. "No mountain is crumbling. A mere village, nourishing its insanity with the lifeblood of innocence. You believe you have the power to rescue her." John inclined his body forward. "She is beyond rescue. Her blood has been selected." Nora propped herself up, her fingers curling around a delicate medical scalpel that Isabella had inadvertently abandoned. "If my blood is to be chosen, then I shall be the one to spill it myself. You won't take that step for my sake." All were momentarily paralyzed. John emitted a chilling, subdued chuckle. "This child has finally come to an understanding." "Negative." Edward let out a piercing scream. "Refrain." A resounding crack echoed from behind them. A sharp crack echoed through the air. A bullet skimmed across John's cheek, sending him reeling backward. The clinic was awash in the glow of headlights. The megaphone erupted with a powerful resonance. "Law enforcement agency, raise your hands." Upon the earth. Following a tumultuous night of flight, a section of the forsaken clinic lay in smoldering ruins. The National Police arrived just in the nick of time to save Edward's group from the encroaching flames that threatened to engulf all. Yet Blackwood lingered shrouded in shadows, while John, the chief of the village, had made his escape. Nora found herself relocated to a fortified site in the northern expanse of Wyoming, nestled within a medical facility shielded by military oversight. She remained unresponsive to the sounds around her, her body still and unmoving. For 2 long days she remained silent. Silence prevails. There was an absence of eye contact. On the 3rd day, her voice returned at last. Yet, she refrained from reaching out to anyone to share her tale. Within the confines of the isolation room, Edward found himself seated opposite her. A cup of hot cocoa sat on the table, its steam curling upwards in delicate wisps. Isabella lingered at his side, her notebook clutched firmly in her grasp. "You don't have to speak unless you're prepared," Edward murmured gently. Nora bowed her head, her voice a mere whisper, rough like the remnants of extinguished fire. "They took me in my youth. I have no recollection of my parents. A solitary figure, a woman with cascading locks, guided me to the threshold of the village before vanishing into the ether." Isabella opened her notebook with a swift motion, her pen dancing across the pages in a flurry of thoughts. Edward inclined his body, drawing closer. "Was there anyone to guide you after that?" "Indeed. She was known as the midwife of the village. She was aged, her face a tapestry of wrinkles, eyes ablaze with an inner fire. Clad in a perpetual black cloak, they grasped a rosary crafted from the bones of goats. Lucy, peering through the one-way glass, murmured, "Damn, a pivotal figure." Nora pressed on, her tone devoid of inflection, as if she were delivering lines that were not her own. With each full moon, I found myself lying in a field. They drenched me in goat's blood. The midwife remarked that the body must acclimate to the notion of sacrifice. Edward's fists tightened into hard knots. Were there others present? Other children were present, yet none survived beyond the age of 14. She lifted her gaze and locked eyes with Edward for the very first time. Following the celebration of my 14th birthday, she declared, "It's time. The crimson tide should cascade like a mountain spring." Isabella averted her gaze, tears streaming down her cheeks. Nora bit her lip until it bled, then pressed on. They dragged me to the village square, crafted a wooden post, bound my hands with prickly tendrils. All eyes were on the elderly, the youth, and even the little ones who were younger than I. Edward inquired gently, "What have they done to you?" Initially, they sheared my locks. At that moment, 3 men restrained me. One of them plunged a knife into my belly, shallow enough to survive, merely piercing the surface enough to draw forth crimson drops. She trembled. As the crimson tide began to flow, the midwife arrived. She grasped an object, crimson as flames, radiating intense heat, and she pressed it firmly. "Where might that be?" Isabella gasped for breath. Nora responded with clarity, unwavering, positioned between my legs. She remarked, "We cleanse the seed. Thus, impurity shall never flourish." Edward rested his head upon the table. The atmosphere in the room thickened. I let out a piercing scream. I implored, yet assistance was nowhere to be found. They urged silence. The mountain stands in silent attention. Lucy stepped inside, her eyes glistening with a hint of crimson. "She requires a moment of respite." "No," Nora declared for the first time with unwavering determination. "I must complete this task. If I do not, they will visit me in my dreams." Edward gave a slight nod. "Proceed at your convenience." Once the mark was seared into my skin, she summoned 4 elders. They placed me upon a stone slab, intricately etched with spirals. One communicated in Latin. Another grasped my head. Another ground the ash into the wound. She gulped with difficulty. Her throat felt parched. As the flow of crimson ceased, they were convinced I had slipped into the embrace of death. Yet, I found myself wide awake. I absorbed it all. What transpired next? As the clock struck midnight and the last remnants of the crowd faded away, a mysterious woman emerged from the shadows. Her visage mirrored my own, exactly as mine. With a swift motion, she severed the ropes and breathed out a hushed command. "Run, my daughter. Refrain from glancing behind you." Nora's fingers glided over her scars, tracing the contours of her face. I navigated the dense underbrush, my feet stained with crimson. I lost track of time as I crawled, until at last I glimpsed the light. Isabella clasped her hand gently. "You have endured. That is what truly holds significance." I find myself uncertain. I remain undeniably human. Edward gazed intently into Nora's eyes. One is human. They were the monsters cloaked in flesh. Lucy remarked that if that woman were indeed your mother, we must verify it. A DNA test is necessary. Nora inclined her head in agreement. "I seek understanding." Whoever she may have been on that fateful night, she became my savior. In the heart of the secure operations room at National Police Headquarters in Washington, D.C., General Ralph Monroe, leading the investigation, forcefully dropped the case file onto the table. The tale of the mountain cult's blood has transcended mere legend. A living witness stands before us, accompanied by tangible evidence, and now we possess a direct testimony. Officer Matthew delivered his report, detailing the apprehension of 3 individuals involved in the assault on the clinic. Among them, 8 individuals managed to flee, with John Wilson being one of them. "Do we have identification photos?" the general inquired. Indeed, however, the majority lack any civil documentation. Absence of birth certificates, absence of tax IDs, they exist entirely beyond the reach of conventional society. General Monroe faced the forensics team and the additional victims. Lucy unfurled her report. In the Blackwood Mountain region, the remains of no fewer than 14 children were discovered. Many exhibited ritualistic markings, including double spiral scars and indications of genital mutilation. Matthew's fists tightened into hard knots. For decades, they have engaged in this practice. "Is there any sign of John?" Monroe inquired. Ellen observed the movement of a thermal drone in the southern ravine. "It might very well be him." Monroe inclined his head in agreement, initiated the search for the fugitive. "Ensure the girl remains safe. She holds the essential element." The darkness descended. Nora reclined in her room, cradling a fresh sketch pad. Edward stepped inside, cradling 2 steaming mugs of hot cocoa in his hands. "Would you like to sketch the visage of the one who rescued you?" he inquired. With a subtle nod, she set to work, her pencil gliding across the page in delicate strokes. As she completed her task, Edward stood motionless. The visage captured in the drawing belonged to Lucy. He pivoted his gaze. Lucy lingered quietly in the hallway, her gaze fixed on the scene beyond the glass. Edward emerged into the open air, his voice barely above a whisper. "Is there anything you've kept from me?" Lucy paused, enveloped in silence for a moment. Then she uttered her words, scarcely louder than a breath. "Nora is my daughter." On the eve of Christmas, a soft layer of snow enveloped northern Wyoming. The wind cut through the air with a sharpness that stung, as temperatures plummeted to a chilling -10 degrees Celsius. Yet within the confines of the military-secured isolation facility where Nora was held, the atmosphere crackled with a tension akin to a fuse poised to spark. Dr. Edwards sat by the window, his gaze fixed on Lucy, who had remained silent since her revelation 3 hours ago. Nora was her biological child. "What will you express to her?" Without turning, Edward inquired. Lucy let out a breath, her eyes glistening with a hint of crimson. "I'm uncertain. I once believed that concealing the truth was a form of safeguarding her. Yet all I accomplished was guiding her into the abyss." Edward cast his gaze upon his notes. "Do you recall who entrusted your daughter to that village midwife?" Lucy paused, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. "A gentleman by the name of Jacob. He trailed behind me during our college days. Upon discovering my pregnancy, I left Washington in a state of fear, seeking distance from my family. He led me to Blackwood, claiming it was a sanctuary. And he sold you to them," Edward said, his voice laced with bitterness. "Negative. He did not persuade me. He belonged to their ranks." Suddenly, a door swung open, breaking the moment. Isabella stepped inside, her complexion ashen. "A dilemma has arisen. A jamming device has been identified within a 5-kilometer radius. Internal communications have plummeted by 70%. They are approaching." Edward rose abruptly. "What is the count of men in our possession?" "Merely 3 guards. A deceptive signal led the primary unit to be rerouted to the western perimeter." Lucy wore a bitter smirk. "They possess a keen understanding of the art of misdirection." Edward shifted to Nora's bed. She lay in slumber, her forehead glistening with beads of sweat. "We cannot abandon her here," he stated. "Not with the madmen encroaching. Where shall we venture?" Isabella's voice cut through the air sharply. "Every primary route is obstructed." With a deliberate motion, Edward delved into the depths of his coat, retrieving a map that seemed to hold secrets of its own. Deep beneath the surface lies a maintenance tunnel that winds its way to St. Paul's Church, approximately 2 kilometers from this very spot. Should we arrive there prior to their discovery? "I'm going with her," Lucy interjected. Isabella gently shook her head, a subtle gesture that spoke volumes. "Negative. If we are discovered, it will be necessary for one of us to remain behind to divert their attention." Edward cast his gaze upon the 2 women. "In that case, I shall accompany Nora. Remain here, both of you." "No," Lucy stated with conviction. "I am her mother. This moment, I refuse to allow her to walk alone once more." Isabella grasped Edward's hand firmly. "The hourglass has run dry. Let us proceed." After the passage of 20 minutes, the window of the medical wing let out a soft creak as it opened. Edward bore Nora upon his back. With an infrared flashlight in hand, Lucy took the lead. They traversed the yard, glided through the dimly lit back corridor of the cafeteria, and arrived at a weathered steel grate, its rust telling tales of time gone by. Edward gasped for breath. Only 12 minutes remain until they commenced the perimeter sweep. With a deliberate motion, Lucy raised the grate. "Proceed at this moment." A distant siren wailed, cutting through the stillness. A profound rumble resonated. reminiscent of an explosion's aftermath. Isabella's voice crackled through the radio, announcing that they had breached the main gate. "Proceed with haste," Lucy implored. Edward descended, cradling Nora in his embrace. The girl stirred, her voice barely a whisper. "Once more, they have arrived. No one shall take you from me again," Edward vowed. A procession of figures clad in gray cloaks advances through the main gate. Adorned in masks crafted from leaves, their eyes shimmered with a haunting red glow. Their chants resonated with unwavering rhythm. "Flames cleanse, and the chill of winter insists upon it from within us." At the forefront stood John Wilson, his head uncovered, gripping a flickering torch that illuminated the darkness. "Where is the girl?" he growled at the captured guard. "Goodbye, betrayers of our sacred planet." He lifted the torch aloft. Behind him, a multitude brandished spiral-shaped branding irons. "The flames shall purify the blemish upon the mountain." Isabella unsheathed her weapon and discharged a shot into the sky. "No one dares to move forward." John curled his lip in disdain. "An entire generation cannot be halted. However, I could aim for your head." She heard the echo of footsteps trailing behind her. Isabella turned, but it was too late. A towering figure had stealthily approached and seized her firearm. She fought valiantly, yet a powerful blow landed on her shoulder, sending her crashing to the ground. "She was delaying," John remarked. "They are making their escape." From the depths, a voice responded. "A drain extends towards St. Paul's Church." John raised his hand in a subtle gesture. "Part ways. Incinerate every route. Flush them out as if they were mere vermin." Within the shadowy confines of the tunnel, Edward and Lucy sprinted, surrounded by the rhythmic sound of dripping water and the haunting echo of their footsteps. "They're behind us," Edward said, his breath coming in quick gasps. "They are familiar with the tunnel." With labored breaths, Lucy bore Nora in her arms. "We are nearing the exit." Out of nowhere, a series of thuds echoed in the distance. The beam of the flashlight revealed a barricaded escape, a steel gate secured with a padlock from the outside. "Alas!" Edward exclaimed loudly. With gentle care, Lucy placed Nora down. "Force it ajar." Edward extracted a surgical knife, attempting to insert it into the slender crevice. Beads of sweat cascaded down his face, a stark contrast to the biting chill of the air around him. "What is the distance to the church?" Lucy inquired. 50 meters, yet if we find ourselves unable to proceed." The sound of chanting reverberated in the air behind them. Then the flicker of torchlight, or flames cleanse. Lucy surveyed her surroundings. There, a conduit for airflow. Edward pivoted. "Nora, are you able to navigate through it?" The girl gently shook her head. "Indeed. Fear grips me." Lucy embraced her. "You made it through that night. You possess a strength that surpasses them all." Nora gave a slight nod before she began to crawl into the duct. Edward elevated her legs. Lucy trailed closely behind. As they disappeared within, a torch fell precisely at the spot they had occupied. The tunnel erupted in a blaze of fire. "Every path is engulfed in flames," Edward shouted. "Accelerate your pace." St. Paul's Church, ancient, worn, and shadowy, yet the sole refuge untouched by encroachment. The manhole cover sprang ajar. Edward cautiously emerged, his eyes sweeping across the surroundings. "Everything is in order." Ascend. With a determined effort, Lucy hoisted Nora upward before finally extricating herself from the confines below. They fell to the frigid church floor, breathless and weary. "They'll be here soon," Edward gasped, his breath hitching in his throat. Lucy embraced her daughter tightly. Yet, here we are, embracing the great outdoors. The sudden crash of shattering glass echoed, leaving no one a moment to respond. The grand doors of the church swung wide, as if propelled by an unseen force. Over 20 figures surged forward, akin to a torrent. With unwavering determination, John surged ahead, the ritual dagger gripped tightly in his hand. Allow the demon to re-emerge upon the earth. Edward leaped before Nora, or step away or face dire consequences. John erupted into a fit of maniacal laughter. "End my suffering. The earth shall give rise to another. The girl's bloodline is treachery. She must burn." Lucy stood up. "I'm her mother. Yet here I stand, very much alive." John came to a stop. "That simply cannot be done." With a swift motion, Lucy retrieved the gun from her waistband. "Do you wish to lay a hand on my daughter? Then perish first." Yet, from the shadows, another cultist emerged, encircling Nora and seizing her with a firm grip. The girl let out a piercing scream, her body writhing in panic. Negative. Once more, it seems. Edward and Lucy both surged forward, yet they had already pulled Nora from the church, bringing her to a stone circle where 4 torches flickered ominously at each corner. One among them commenced a chant in the echoes of ancient Latin. Through flame, through sacrifice, through an unbreakable connection. Flame started to caress the edge of the girl's dress. A voice pierced through the throng. Allow the demon to ignite. Her blood carries a taint. The crimson flames started to inch their way up Nora's legs. She let out a piercing scream, her body bound securely to the wooden post with rope stained crimson with blood. The searing fabric sent waves of agony coursing through her thighs, awakening a beast within her. Kindly. Never do that again, she shouted. I wish to continue living. The audience stood frozen, their eyes wide and unyielding. Each donned wooden masks, their mouths whispering words from a time long lost to memory. With determination, Lucy surged ahead, only to be restrained by the grip of 4 men. Edward fell to the ground, his head colliding with the unforgiving stone steps, blood streaming from his forehead. He crept forward, quaking, his eyes aflame with a fierce crimson glow. That is sufficient. Leave her alone, he shouted. John lifted his hand. A cultist approached, carrying a small metal basin brimming with a dark red liquid. John plunged both hands into the mixture, spreading it across his face as if donning a comforting mask. He grasped the 5th torch and positioned himself before Nora. All has been set in motion, he declared with a grave tone. You are the gift bestowed upon us. You were selected by the earth even before your first breath. Lucy writhed in agony, her screams piercing the air. That is my daughter. She is not a victim of circumstance. John glanced in her direction. Your perspective is misguided. Her selection was inevitable, for she is your daughter. A lineage steeped in treachery. Blood must purify blood. Isabella, bound to yet another pillar, twisted in her restraints. You fiends! This you deem a ritual. This is an act of murder. John disregarded her presence and moved in closer to Nora, tilting the torch down toward her delicate features. The aroma of trepidation beckons like a flame's allure. At the very moment he was poised to deliver the blow, with a sudden explosive sound, the silence was shattered. John stumbled unsteadily. The bullet ripped through his left shoulder, crimson splattering as he howled in agony, a creature in distress. Floodlights burst forth from every angle, illuminating the entire expanse of the forest. The wind howled through the branches, a cacophony of sirens piercing the air. Helicopters hovered overhead, their searchlights cutting through the night like a beacon of retribution. Law enforcement agency. Lay down your arms. Take your position on the ground. The voice resonated powerfully throughout the clearing. The masked cultists were engulfed in a wave of panic. A few attempted to escape, but their efforts were abruptly curtailed by the echo of warning shots. Elite special forces converged on the scene from every direction, encircling the entire area with precision. Edward shouted, Nora. She is ablaze. A medic dashed ahead and severed the bindings. Nora crumpled to the earth, her gown reduced to cinders, her legs scorched and blistered, tendrils of smoke curling from her skin. Lucy gently crawled over, enveloping her daughter in a tender embrace. My little one, my little one. Isabella, liberated from her constraints, hurried to offer her assistance. She draws in a breath. General Ralph Monroe, the operations commander, emerged from the armored vehicle, his gaze sweeping across the grim tableau, stone, blood, smoldering wood, and a child, unconscious, cradled in a doctor's arms. He muttered under his breath, a curse slipping through his lips. How often have they repeated this action? Officer Matthew stepped forward to deliver his report. 11 members of the cult have been apprehended. Among the 6 who broke free, John was one of them. However, we are securing the mountain pathways. Edward ripped a piece from his shirt, using it to bind the wound on his head, blood seeping through the fabric. He settled next to Nora, grasping her small, scorched, quaking hand. She's alive, he whispered, as though seeking to reassure his own heart. A medic announced, We're flying her out now. She must be transferred to Washington for burn treatment. With a gentle nod, Lucy held her daughter close, refusing to let go. I shall accompany her. Edward rested his hand gently on her shoulder. I shall be joining as well. Isabella offered a wry smile. If a child must bear the weight of hell upon her shoulders merely to call forth the army, then justice is indeed the most languid force in existence. Nora was administered 4 fluids in the military ambulance. Her eyes slowly opened, the pupils clouded with disbelief. Edward bent closer to her, cradling a petite notebook in his hands. "Do you recall the initial letter of the alphabet?" She offered a subtle nod. "You once expressed a desire to learn how to read. Let us begin with the first page," he murmured, revealing a handwritten A. Lucy clasped her daughter's hand, bringing it gently to her heart. "You exist. That stands as the most extraordinary miracle of my existence." 3 in the morning. The helicopter touched down at Joint Base Andrews in Washington. Nora was swiftly admitted to the burn unit at the New Horizons Center, a dedicated facility for the care of abused children. General Monroe lingered in the hallway, his countenance weighed down by unspoken thoughts. Matthew drew near. "We have completed the sweeping of Blackwood. Deep beneath the surface lie chambers shrouded in mystery, holding the remnants of rituals that have echoed through the ages. Remains of children, more than 30 skeletons discovered. Are there any documents available? Negative. A majority of the children were sourced from isolated regions. Absence of birth certificates." Monroe stated with a somber intensity, "We are not merely battling a cult. We are engaged in a battle against a culture that embraces death." Matthew's fists tightened into hard knots. This time, at least one child survived. In the quiet of the recovery room, Edward, Lucy, and Isabella gathered around Nora's bedside. She slumbered serenely, her breaths gentle and rhythmic through the oxygen mask. Isabella glanced over at Lucy. "What are your plans following this?" Lucy offered a gentle smile. "I shall begin anew, accompanied by my daughter. Regardless of the time it demands, I shall remain patient until she finds it in her heart to forgive me." Edward inclined his head in acknowledgement. "I shall continue my journey as a doctor. However, I shall no longer limit myself to merely tending to injuries. I shall unveil, document, and identify each visage lurking in the darkness." Isabella brushed away the tears that stained her cheeks. "Changing the world may be beyond our reach, yet we have the power to rescue one child at a time." Lucy cast her gaze upon Nora, a single child who emerged from the ordeal unscathed, a doctor who stood firm, refusing to turn away, and one once shadowed land, at last, pulled into the brilliance of the light. On a brisk January morning, golden sunlight streamed through the lofty windows of the burn unit at New Horizons Center in Washington, a refuge for children who had endured abuse. In the garden, the cheerful chirping of sparrows filled the air. Nora slowly opened her eyes. After enduring countless nightmares, she finally beheld light for the first time. Not a blaze, not a beacon of light. Yet the soft sunlight bathed the scene in warmth, devoid of any trace of blood, absent of cries. The ceiling exuded a gentle softness, its hue a pristine white. The walls adorned with vibrant depictions of animals and trees. A sticker of a blue elephant dangled gracefully above the window. Beside her bed, on a plush chair, Edward dozed, his head resting against the wall. Nora made a subtle movement. A tiny 4 was affixed to her arm with tape. Her right hand was swathed in bandages, yet she experienced no pain, only a lingering dullness that enveloped her senses. Isabella entered the room, cradling a cup of warm milk in her hands. As Nora's eyes fluttered open, a smile spread across her face without hesitation. "Good morning, my courageous girl," she murmured softly, taking care not to disturb Edward's slumber. "You have emerged from slumber." Nora inclined her head with a measured deliberation. "Where could I possibly be?" "Washington. A sanctuary from which you may never be discovered again." She placed the milk on the table with care and softly rested her hand on Nora's forehead. "There is no fever present. That is quite favorable. Would you care for a drink?" Nora cast a wary eye upon the cup, uncertainty flickering within her. "It isn't goat blood, is it?" she whispered. Isabella stood still, her eyes burning with intensity. Then she let out a soft, melodic laugh. "Absolutely not. It is the milk derived from cows, sweetened, and a hint of cinnamon." Edward roused from his slumber. Upon catching sight of Nora's gaze fixed upon him, he felt an overwhelming surge of emotion, nearly succumbing to tears. "You have emerged from slumber." "Am I dead, doctor?" Nora inquired. "Negative. You existed. You have persevered." He extracted a petite cerulean tome from the depths of his pocket. Do you recall sharing your desire to learn how to read? The girl sealed her lips in a tight line. Indeed. Edward turned to the first page. The letter A stands alone. This is the inaugural instance. Nora's fingers brushed against the page, a subtle tremor coursing through her hand, yet gradually her expression began to soften. A smile, delicate and nearly imperceptible, graced the corner of her lips. It was her inaugural experience. Lucy entered, cradling a bouquet of pristine white tulips. "Are you fond of flowers?" Nora inclined her head in agreement. With a delicate grace, Lucy settled into her seat, setting the bouquet down upon the table. "Do you remember your mother?" she inquired. The girl gazed at her, the silence stretching between them like a taut string, holding unspoken words in the air. "I don't know," she finally whispered. "I have never known the presence of a mother." Lucy offered a wistful smile. "Perhaps, beginning today, I might endeavor to embrace that role." Nora inclined her head, lost in thought. In that moment, she extended her hand. Lucy grasped her hand, tears streaming quietly down her cheeks. Edward rose to his feet. "I shall take my leave, allowing you both to converse." But first, he offered her a pencil, urging her to inscribe the letter right here for him. Nora penned her thoughts. Her hand trembled slightly, the line uneven yet unmistakable. Lucy beamed with delight. "It is, too, the initial character of embrace?" Nora inquired. "Indeed, the initial term I wish to impart to you." A week later, Nora's health had taken a swift turn for the better. She dined, strolled independently, and every morning she engaged in reading practice with Edward. Each afternoon, Lucy would weave tales for her, stories of blossoms, the sea, and her vibrant youth before life took a turn for the worse. On a particular day, amidst the atmosphere of a group therapy session, a counselor by the name of Carla posed a question. "Nora, what is it that you desire most at this very moment?" Nora remained quiet for an extended period. Then, with a gentle whisper, "I desire an authentic name." Carla beamed with delight. "What is your true name?" "Nora," she replied with conviction. "I am not a demon. I exist as an individual." The atmosphere in the room shifted as doctors, nurses, and therapists alike fell into a profound silence. In a notable gathering at the United States Department of the Interior, General Monroe and Officer Matthew convened a press conference. The cameras began to roll, filling the room with a throng of eager reporters. General Monroe made an announcement. "Today, we have unveiled the preliminary findings of our investigation into the enigmatic cult known as the Blood of the Mountain. The organization has been deemed unlawful, functioning beyond the confines of the law and perpetrating grave violations of human rights." Matthew pressed on. 17 individuals have been indicted, comprising 6 principal members and 11 associates. The charges encompass the torture of minors, unlawful religious rituals, conspiracy to commit murder, and the concealment of human remains. A journalist inquired, "What of the other children?" Matthew responded, stating that they had successfully rescued 12 other children from Blackwood and its neighboring regions. "There are those who exist without names, without the formalities of birth certificates. All individuals are now receiving care and will be bestowed with legal identities." Monroe reached a conclusion. "This marks merely the inception of pulling shadows into illumination. Yet, we stand resolute. There shall be no refuge for any cult upon American soil." On a February morning, in the garden of the New Horizons Center, Nora found herself surrounded by vibrant tulips, clad in a striking red sweater and a white striped scarf that fluttered gently in the breeze. A soft wind wafted the aroma of new grass and the warmth of dawn's light. Isabella glided over, a tray of toast balanced gracefully in her hands. "The hour for breakfast has arrived. And there exists strawberry jam." Nora radiated joy. "The scent is not reminiscent of goat's blood." Isabella erupted in laughter. "Henceforth, it shall be nothing but toast and cocoa." Lucy made her entrance, clutching a sizable envelope. "Correspondence has arrived, hailing from Seattle." Nora lifted her gaze. "Who was the sender?" With a graceful gesture, Lucy passed it to her. "A household united. Your tale captivated them, and now they invite you to join them in their world." The girl unfolded the letter and perused the meticulously penned lines. "Though unfamiliar to me, I am eager to embark on this journey." Lucy knelt, gently weaving her fingers through her daughter's hair. "I have no intention of leaving. I will remain by your side, should you desire it. Yet, you possess the power to determine the course of your existence. Nora gazed upward, her eyes tracing the vast expanse of the sky. I shall make the selection. A year has passed. A television studio of national prominence. Bright stage lights illuminated a solitary chair positioned at the heart of the stage. Nora, her shoulder-length hair meticulously styled, donned a light blue dress and maintained an upright posture. Her eyes shimmered with brilliance, and her voice resonated with clarity and assurance. Nora is the name I go by. I once dwelled in shadows, yet the shadows did not claim my life. The host inquired, "Is there anything you would like to express to the audience tuning in?" She inclined her head in agreement. I am not a demon, I am an individual. I aspire to become a doctor, exactly as he is. The camera swept over to the guest section, revealing Edward, his grip tight on the armrest, tears streaming down his face. Beside him sat Lucy, her gaze radiating warmth and pride. Isabella erupted in applause, her smile beaming with joy. The glow of the spotlight cast a radiant light upon Nora's features. Enough of the bloodshed, scarless. A solitary child, a survivor, brimming with resilience and hope. On a Monday morning, the central hub of the United States Justice Department. The formal announcement of the indictment was transmitted live across the nation. On the stage, 3 officials took their places: General Ralph Monroe, Chief Prosecutor Teresa Hill, and Lead Investigator Officer Matthew Davis. The auditorium brimmed with journalists. Teresa approached the podium, her voice resolute. Today, we formally announce that the organization known as the Blood of the Mountain is hereby classified as a criminal cult and is permanently prohibited throughout the United States. A soft tide of whispers flowed across the room. She pressed on. 17 individuals have been formally indicted. Among these, 11 individuals have been apprehended after surrendering, while 2 key figures lost their lives during armed conflict. Matthew contributed. Allegations encompass the performance of rituals that infringe upon human rights, the torture of minors, conspiracy to commit murder, the concealment of bodies, and the involvement of children in illicit religious ceremonies. A journalist lifted their hand. Reports indicate that numerous victims lack distinct identities. Could you please verify that? General Monroe replied. Indeed, that is accurate. Throughout the course of the investigation, we uncovered a troubling reality. At least 14 children were found lacking birth certificates, medical records, or any form of civil identification numbers. The children find themselves in the embrace of national protective care, navigating the intricate journey of forging their legal identities. A different journalist inquired, "What of the girl named Nora, the sole known living witness?" Matthew responded, "She has made a complete recovery and now resides with an adoptive family in Seattle. Moreover, she has embarked on an extraordinary journey." Teresa beamed with a warm smile. She declared, and I quote, "My true name is Nora. I am no demon. I exist as a human being. I aspire to become a doctor, just as he is." A year has passed. St. Andrews High School, located in the vibrant city of Seattle, in the serene, sun-drenched courtyard, Nora perched by the classroom window, cradling a fundamental biology book. Her raven locks were gathered with precision, her ivory shirt immaculate and sharp. Lucy, a volunteer teacher, strolled by and halted, captivated by the sight of her daughter's radiant smile. "How far have you read?" she inquired. "The section dedicated to blood, yet again the essence of life coursing through living vessels, not the same as what came before." Lucy settled herself next to her. "You have emerged from it." Nora glanced in her direction. "My desire is to bring healing to others, similar to Dr. Edward." Lucy gave a slight nod. "In that case, it seems you require a companion to accompany you on your journey. Whom does this pertain to?" The rear door creaked open. Edward entered the room, his long gray coat draping elegantly around him, now embellished with a national medal pin proudly displayed on the left side of his chest. "Hello, doctor," he said with a smile. "Are you prepared?" Nora dashed toward him, enveloping him in a warm embrace. "I absorbed knowledge from A to Z. Now we embark on a journey to explore the heart." The ceremony for the National Medal of Courage and Humanitarianism took place at the Capitol. On the expansive screen, images unfolded of the Blackwood rescue operations, showcasing the joyful expressions of children who had once been held captive. The host made the announcement, Today, we pay tribute to a man who faced adversity head-on, who made the courageous choice to stand amidst the flames, Dr. Edward Smith. The whole auditorium erupted in applause. Edward stepped onto the stage, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. The medal was bestowed upon him by the president. The president inquired, "Would you care to share your thoughts?" Edward inclined his head, advancing toward the microphone. Every soul is meant to embrace the light. Yet, when we witness a child tumbling into a black hole, we face a pivotal decision: to avert our gaze or to extend a hand. I am not a hero. I have just made contact. Below the stage, Nora grasped Lucy's hand, her eyes aglow with excitement. June, her inaugural journey to the shore. Nora dashed over the pristine white sands of Cape Cod, clutching a wide-brimmed straw hat. Lucy reclined beneath the shade of a beach umbrella, a smile gracing her lips as she observed her daughter. Edward was crafting sandcastles alongside other children saved from Blackwood. "She's truly blossoming," Isabella remarked, taking a seat next to Lucy. "Once, I believed she would never smile," Lucy whispered. Isabella tightened her grasp. Yet, she illuminated the path for the world to ascend. A fresh nameplate was affixed outside a classroom at the New Horizons Center. Nora Smith Room, Department of Adolescent Trauma Recovery. At the opening ceremony, young Nora, just 15, stood poised before an audience of over 100 guests. Clad in a pristine white lab coat, she grasped the microphone with unwavering hands. The details of the past elude my memory. Yet, I recall those who grasped my hand in moments of uncertainty, those who were there to catch me as I tumbled. And now I yearn to join their ranks for the children who continue to fall. Applause erupted throughout the room. Edward inclined his head toward Lucy, his voice barely a breath as he whispered, "She illuminates the path for others, bearing the scars that once seared her soul." Lucy replied, "And she accomplishes it, without harboring any desire for retribution." In the confines of a maximum security prison, John Wilson found himself perched on a frigid stone bench, his hands bound in chains. A heavy sheet of glass stood between him and prosecutor Teresa Hill. "Do you have any final words before the trial?" she inquired. John wore a sly grin. "Do you believe that what you refer to as justice can truly halt the mountain?" Teresa remained unresponsive. She set a file down upon the glass table. A total of 63 individuals have fallen victim. 17 endured. One among them emerged as our pivotal witness. John squinted, his gaze sharpening with intensity. "She continues to draw breath." Teresa inched nearer. "She exists beyond mere survival. She is on the path to becoming a doctor." Her lips curve into a smile. "She acquires knowledge. She is surrounded by a family that cherishes her deeply." For the first time, a shift flickered across John's face. He muttered that she was meant to be consumed by the flames of the ritual. Teresa rose to her feet. "Absolutely not. She was destined to enter the world just like any other child. And now, justice shall incinerate all that you once deemed tradition." She departed from him in the confines of the cell. The wind whispered through a narrow barred window, bringing with it the fragrance of light that this place could never truly hold. The warm embrace of a summer evening. In a quaint park nestled close to her new abode in Seattle, Nora found solace by a fountain, engrossed in her book. With a graceful stride, Lucy drew near, presenting her with a letter. She smiled, a representative from the Department of Education. Nora opened it, scanned the contents swiftly, and then her eyes sparkled with excitement. A complete scholarship, School of Medicine. Lucy embraced her with warmth. Edward and Isabella approached, their faces alight with smiles as they gently patted her back. "You will become a doctor," Edward remarked. "Yet it stands apart from the rest. You are a testament to resilience." Nora's lips curled into a smile. "I am a human being, and I shall become a healer." The four of them came together in a warm embrace, the streetlights casting a soft glow on the luminous face of a girl who had once been cast aside into a ditch, scorched by flames and ravaged by the harshness of humanity. Yet now, she embodied light. Nora's narrative stands as a profound tribute to the enduring power of bravery, empathy, and righteousness. Despite being nurtured in shadows, she discovered illumination through the unwavering gaze of those who confront malevolence head-on. Through her, we discover that a single individual rising to the occasion, a solitary hand extended, can alter the destiny of a child. Though the shadows may stretch long and envelop all, The arrival of light is an unwavering force that triumphs in the end. Above all, it is crucial to remember that victims are not demons. They possess humanity. They are worthy of existence, nearly on a daily basis. Your support is deeply appreciated. Until we meet again.